Some stories do not start with a fight. They start with a quiet routine that gets interrupted in a way you cannot unhear. At Revenge Sins. We have learned to recognize that moment, the one where someone finally notices how much of their life has been built around keeping other people comfortable. Naomi Keller carried that kind of weight for a long time, and it showed in the way she described her home, not like a trophy, but like a place she could finally breathe. This is where she begins. I used to come home and pause with my key in the lock, just for a second, because the house was quiet, not perfect, not fancy, just quiet in a way my childhood never was. The entryway light had a slight flicker I kept forgetting to fix. The little shoe rack by the wall leaned a bit to the left because I assembled it wrong and refused to admit it. I liked those kinds of imperfections. They were mine. I set my laptop bag down, kicked my shoes off, and walked straight into the kitchen like I always did. I opened the fridge, stared at the leftovers, and went for the easy option. Microwave dinner, glass of water, then a shower. I was halfway through folding laundry when my phone buzzed. One notification, then another. Then the screen lit up with a name I had not saved as anything cute. Daniel. My older brother did not text to check in. He texted to move pieces around on a board. I watched the phone vibrate across my coffee table and let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again. I picked up on the second round, already feeling my shoulders tighten. Naomi. Daniel's voice came through like he was already mid-conversation. I need you to stay calm. I'm calm. No, listen. I'm coming to your place tonight. The way he said it made my stomach drop. Not asking. Not checking. Just laying it down like he had a key. I'm not set up for that. I told him, I have work in the morning. Work will be there. I won't. A sharp exhale on his end, like he was performing stress. Things blew up. I'm not going back in that house. I stared at the laundry in my lap. A clean towel. A pair of socks. Ordinary things. Where is Mom? She knows. Daniel lowered his voice, like he was being respectful. She said you've got the space and you're the only one who will do the right thing. My throat went tight. The phrase "the only one" carried its own history. Daniel, you can stay at a hotel. I'm not wasting money on a hotel. He sounded offended. I'm not some stranger. You're my sister. The word sister landed like an order. I tried to keep my voice even. You can come tomorrow. We can talk during daylight. I'm already packed. A pause, then the final push. If you make this difficult, Mom's going to be furious. There it was. Not a request. A threat wrapped in family vocabulary. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Another call. This time it was Ruth Keller. I answered, and my mother did not bother with hello. Naomi, your brother needs you, she said, like she was reading it off a card. You are not going to turn him away. I'm not turning him away. I'm asking for a plan. The plan is he stays with you until he gets back on his feet. Her tone stayed smooth, which somehow made it worse. Do not argue with me tonight. I swallowed, tasting bitterness I had not earned. We'll talk tomorrow. I managed. You will do what I said, Ruth replied. And you will remember who signs your paychecks. At Revenge Sins. We have heard that kind of sentence before. It tends to arrive softly, and it tends to change everything. I stood up so fast the laundry slid to the floor. My hands were shaking, and I hated that they were. Mom, I said, forcing the word out steady. This is my house. The line went quiet for a beat. Keep your voice respectful, Ruth said. Daniel will be there soon. The call ended. I looked around my living room, at the leaning shoe rack, the flickering light, the folded towel on the floor. The quiet I loved was still here, but it already felt like it was slipping away. If you follow stories like this, you can subscribe and stay with us. I did not know it then, but that night was the beginning of my exit. Daniel arrived just after 9. The low, diesel rumble of the moving truck rattled my windows before the headlights even swept across the lawn. He hadn't been waiting for my yes. He had been idling at a gas station 2 blocks away, waiting for Mom's command to hit my phone. I stepped onto the porch as the brakes hissed. The side panel featured a local moving company logo. 2 men jumped down, stretching their backs with the weary mechanical rhythm of a double shift. They weren't surprised to be working this late. Daniel had clearly paid for the after-hours premium, likely with money he claimed not to have. Daniel climbed out of the cab last, clean jacket, designer jeans, and sunglasses still on despite the dark. He looked relieved, like a man who had just won a difficult negotiation rather than someone who had just lost his home. "There she is," he said, arms spreading wide. "I knew you'd do the right thing. Sis, I thought you said a few bags." "Daniel?" He didn't look back at the truck. "This is a transition. Naomi, I couldn't just leave my essentials in a dumpster." One of the movers asked where to start. Daniel pointed a finger directly at my front door without looking at me. "Living room first. The boxes marked fragile are my footwear collection. Keep them upright. Hold on," I said, my voice tight. The movers paused, looking between us. Daniel's smile didn't drop. It just became thinner, more dangerous. "Naomi, don't make a scene in front of the help," he whispered, stepping into my personal space. "This is my house. We aren't unloading a 3-bedroom apartment into a guest room. Mom told me you had the space," he said, his voice dropping to a low, rhythmic hum of guilt. I just lost everything. My partner, my stability. "Do you really want to be the person who pushes me over the edge tonight?" I hated that I moved aside. I hated that I valued a quiet neighborhood over a loud truth. I stood there as the invasion began. Tall stacks of boxes filled my foyer. My neutral-toned couch disappeared under designer coats. My entryway became a barricade of shoeboxes. Daniel wandered through the kitchen like he was touring a disappointing rental. He stopped at the guest room and scoffed. "This won't work. It's too cramped for my equipment. I need the master suite. Naomi, you know how my skin reacts to stress. I need the ensuite setup for my routine." "No." The word was flat. I surprised us both. Daniel stared at me, then shrugged with a cold, mocking grace. "Fine. For now. We'll revisit this once I've had some sleep." When the truck finally pulled away, my sanctuary felt like a storage unit. Daniel dropped onto my sofa, kicked his shoes onto my coffee table, and picked up the remote. "I'll order Thai," he said, not looking up. "You're paying, right." I stood in the kitchen, keys still clenched in my hand. "This isn't a hotel." "Daniel, relax," he muttered, flipping to a sports channel. "I'm family. That's what family is for." He said it like that settled the debt forever. I looked at the boxes and realized the lock on my door was no longer enough. The first morning after Daniel moved in, I woke up to noise. Not loud. Exactly. Just wrong. Cabinets opening and closing. The scrape of a chair dragged across the kitchen tile. I stood in the doorway in my socks and watched him pour cereal into a bowl I'd bought because it didn't chip easily. "You're out of almond milk," he said, not turning around. "I didn't know you drank almond milk." "I do now." He glanced back. "You should add it to the list." "There is no list." He shrugged and kept eating. The spoon clinked against the bowl, over and over, like he wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere. I grabbed my coffee mug and noticed it was already in the dishwasher. Still dirty. "You moved my things. Just tidied up." Daniel waved the spoon. It was cluttered. I let that one go. I was late for work and already tired in a way sleep didn't fix. When I came home that evening, the front door was unlocked. My chest tightened before I even stepped inside. Daniel's shoes were kicked off in the hallway, not the rack. Just there. A jacket draped over the banister like it belonged. He was on the phone in the living room, feet on my coffee table. "No, it's fine," he was saying. "Naomi's place is basically mine for now." I stopped walking. "Hey," he added, noticing me. "I'm here." He ended the call and smiled like nothing had happened. You don't get to say that. Say what? That this is your place. He sat up a little. You're being dramatic. This is my house. Daniel laughed, short and sharp. You keep saying that like it's a spell. I took a breath, counted. I need you to start locking the door, and you don't put your feet on the table. He stared at me for a second, then leaned back again. Slowly, deliberately. Mom never minded. I do. There it was. The shift. His expression flattened, like he was deciding which version of himself to use. You've changed, he said. Ever since you got this job, you think you're in charge? I am in charge of my house. Wow. He shook his head. You really don't hear yourself. I felt my face heat up, but I didn't raise my voice. That mattered to me. These are small things, I said. Lock the door. Respect the space. That's it. Daniel stood, suddenly close. I could smell his cologne. Too strong for a Tuesday. You're lucky I'm even here, he said quietly. Most people would be grateful. I didn't ask you to come. You didn't stop me. We stood there, neither of us moving. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down and smirked. Mom says hi. She says not to stress you out. Big presentation tomorrow. I stepped back, not because he won, because I needed air. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time since I bought the house. The envelope from the bank was thin, which should have been reassuring. Instead, it sat on my granite counter like a dormant threat. I opened it after dinner, once the house had fallen into a heavy silence and Daniel had disappeared with associates he never bothered to name. The statement wasn't a mistake. It was a manifesto of entitlement. The supplementary card I had issued him was supposed to be his lifeline for basic needs. Instead, the transaction history read like a billionaire's vacation. A high-end boutique downtown, a luxury spa that cost more than my mortgage payment, a 5-star restaurant that required a month's notice for a table. In less than 10 days, he had burned through $4,500, nearly 10 times the emergency limit we had discussed. I pulled up our text thread. My eyes burned as I scrolled back to the day he arrived. Card is for groceries and household essentials only. Daniel. Do not exceed $500 total. Confirm you understand. His reply was a single thumbs-up emoji. In the eyes of the law, that was a signed contract. When he finally stumbled in around midnight, the smell of expensive cologne and aged whiskey preceded him. He didn't notice me sitting in the dark kitchen until he reached for the fridge. You're up late, he muttered, his voice thick with satisfaction. Sit down. Daniel. I slid the statement across the island. Explain the $4,000 discrepancy. He glanced at the paper, then back at me, his expression shifting from surprise to a practiced, weary sigh. I'm rebuilding my life. Naomi. I have meetings. I need to look the part to get back on my feet. I need to feel human again. You're rebuilding with my credit score relax. I'll settle it once the divorce settlement clears. Don't be so small-minded. The settlement you haven't even filed for. I stood up, my phone already in my hand. I've already initiated the dispute process with the bank's fraud department. Daniel's face drained of color. You can't do that. You gave me the card. I gave you authorized access for specific categories. I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. Under the Fair Credit Billing Act, this is exceeding authorized access. I have our text agreement saved. I'm reporting these charges as unauthorized misuse. Daniel let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You're going to report your own brother to the bank over a few suits and a massage. You'll look insane. I'll look like a victim of financial exploitation. I replied, hitting the dial button. This isn't a sibling spat. Daniel. This is a procedural correction. I'm creating a paper trail. As I spoke to the representative calmly citing dates, amounts, and the specific limitations of the agreement, Daniel paced the kitchen like a caged animal. He realized then that I wasn't just angry, I was documenting him. When I hung up, he looked at me with a cold, sharp hatred. "You're building a case, aren't you? You're trying to turn me into a criminal. I'm protecting my future," I said. "Something you should have thought about before you treated my bank account like a lottery win." He grabbed his jacket and slammed the door, leaving me alone with the humming refrigerator and the thin stack of paper that was now the first piece of evidence in my escape. My mother didn't call. She sent a calendar invite. Private meeting, conference room. B, noon, no subject line, no love, mom. Just a block of time carved out of my workday like a debt being called in. I spent the morning finalizing the Q4 projections and securing the vendor portals. I made sure every workflow was documented in a way only I could decipher, a maze of efficiencies that looked like order but functioned as a cage. By 11:45, I walked down the hall, my heels clicking rhythmically against the polished tile. Ruth was already there, her blazer buttoned, a manila folder placed with surgical precision in front of her. She looked up and offered the practiced smile she reserved for shareholders, the one that never reached her eyes. "Sit down. Naomi." I closed the door. The room smelled of sharp lemon cleaner and stale air. I took the seat opposite her, noticing her pen was placed perfectly parallel to the folder, a telltale sign of her need for absolute control. "I'm disappointed," she began, her voice a calm, low vibration. "You embarrassed your brother. Reporting a dispute to the bank is an escalation we didn't need. I provided clarification on unauthorized spending." I replied, my voice matching hers. "Daniel violated the terms of the access I provided." Ruth tilted her head. "Daniel is fragile. He needs a sanctuary, not a legal battle with his own sister. He needs to stop spending money he didn't earn." Ruth opened the folder, revealing marketing performance charts, my work, stripped of my name. "You are the operational backbone of this company, Naomi. But remember, this is an at-will state. You are valuable, but you are not irreplaceable." The threat hung in the air, cold and heavy. She was reminding me that she owned the equity, even if I owned the intellect. "I stabilized this firm when the previous strategist nearly sank us," I said quietly. "I run the CRM, the automated fulfillment cycles, and the ad accounts, all of which, I should remind you, are currently tied to my personal security protocols." Ruth's eyes sharpened. A flicker of realization or perhaps fury crossed her face. "What has changed is your attitude. Your house is an extension of this family, and this family is this company. You will withdraw the dispute. You will support your brother, or you can clear your desk by 5 o'clock. And my reputation, I will ensure the industry knows you left under difficult circumstances." I sat with that. The hum of the air conditioner felt like a countdown. Ruth stood, the meeting over in her mind. "Go home. Be a good sister. We'll talk when you've regained your perspective." I watched her leave. I didn't move for a long time. Then, I returned to my desk, opened a hidden encrypted drive, and started a new file. I didn't title it. I just began the slow, methodical process of preparing the systems for my eventual, total absence. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Mom says you're being dramatic. Don't blow your career over a few receipts." I didn't reply. I just kept typing. After the meeting with my mother, I stopped pushing back. I became a ghost in my own home, gliding through the rooms with a pleasant, hollow smile. It wasn't surrender, it was camouflage. Daniel noticed the shift immediately. "You're finally relaxing," he remarked one evening, his dirty boots resting on my mahogany coffee table. "Much better vibe. Sis, Mom said you just needed a reality check to see who's actually in charge." I didn't comment. I didn't even mention the ring of mud he was grinding into the wood. Instead, I picked up his empty beer bottle and rinsed it. My hands were perfectly steady. "I'm just focused on the big picture now," I said. He grinned, satisfied. "Good. You get intense. Nobody likes intense." Behind the scenes, the clock was ticking, while Daniel spent his days networking at high-end bars. I was executing a different kind of strategy. I had Natalie Brooks, my real estate broker, over twice under the guise of an insurance inspector. Daniel didn't even look up from his phone as she took high-resolution photos of the rooms he had claimed as his own. The off-market listing was already circulating among private investment firms. At the office, I was the model employee. I finalized the standard operating procedures SOPs, updated the vendor contracts, and ensured every digital ad account was humming. Ruth walked past my desk and paused, her hand resting on my shoulder like a conqueror. Things seem calmer. Naomi, she observed. They are, I replied, keeping my eyes on my monitor. I knew you'd come around. Her touch felt like a claim of ownership, but I just nodded. A few days later, the trap was set. A thick envelope arrived via certified mail. Daniel, assuming it was more paperwork from my failed bank dispute, signed for it with a flourish of his pen. He tossed it on the counter with a scoff. More junk mail. Sis, you really should stop wasting paper. I picked it up. It was the official 30-day notice to quit, drafted by my attorney. By signing that return receipt, Daniel had legally acknowledged the start of his eviction countdown. He hadn't even bothered to read the header. Later that night, I heard him laughing on the phone in the guest room. She's fine. Mom, totally broken. I told you she just needed to know her place. I sat in the dark, listening to the house settle. From the outside, I was a defeated daughter. Inside, I was a woman who had already sold the floor beneath their feet. The envelope sat in the microwave drawer for 3 days before Daniel's curiosity finally overrode his laziness. He was standing in the kitchen, barefoot and scrolling through a sports betting app, when he frowned at the counter. Did you move that thick envelope, the one I signed for? I didn't look up from the sink, where I was methodically scrubbing a pot. I put it away. I assumed you'd want to open your own mail in private. Just give it here, he muttered, irritation creeping into his voice. Probably some junk from the bank about that dispute you tried to start. I dried my hands slowly and walked to the drawer beneath the microwave. It was a temperamental piece of cabinetry. You had to lift slightly to clear the track. Daniel had lived here for weeks and still hadn't figured that out. I opened it with a practiced flick of the wrist and placed the envelope on the island between us. He tore it open with a scoff, but as he skimmed the document, the smugness drained from his face. What is this? A notice to quit? He laughed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? Sis, it's formal. Daniel, not dramatic. He read faster, his jaw tightening. This says I have 30 days to vacate. You're kidding. You can't just kick me out. We're family. I'm not kicking you out by force, I said, my voice as level as a horizon line. I'm terminating your occupancy. Legally. You signed the certified return receipt 3 days ago, which means the clock has already started. Daniel slapped the paper down on the granite. Mom won't allow this. You know that. She'll have your head for even putting this in writing. This isn't something she allows. Daniel, she owns the company equity, but I own this deed. This is my house. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Daniel looked at me as if I had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. He couldn't comprehend a world where Mom's shadow didn't protect him from the law. You're bluffing, he finally said, his voice lifting in pitch. You'll fold. You always fold when she gets loud. He grabbed the notice, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it into the trash can. There. Solved. I'm going out. The door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows. Later that night, the inevitable happened. Ruth's name lit up my screen. I answered on the 3rd ring. You've gone too far. Naomi, she said, skipping any pretense of a greeting. Her voice was like dry ice burning and cold. Legal notices against your own blood. That is an act of open hostility. It's a lawful procedure. Mother, there is a difference. Do not play semantics with me. You will withdraw that notice tomorrow, or I will make good on our conversation in conference room B. Do you understand the stakes? I understand them perfectly. I replied, and I've already made my peace with them. There was a long, sharp inhale on the other end. You think this makes you powerful. It just makes you alone. She hung up before I could tell her that alone was exactly what I was aiming for. I walked back to my room and opened my laptop. I didn't look at the house listings or my bank account. I looked at the countdown timer I had pinned to my desktop. 27 days until the closing. Daniel thought I was waiting for him to leave. He didn't realize I was waiting for the entire world I had built here to disappear. Daniel left on a Monday morning with a suitcase that groaned at the seams. He was humming a mindless tune, radiating the kind of unearned confidence only a man funded by his mother's guilt could possess. Miami is exactly what I need, he announced, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. Sun, salt water, a total mental reset. Mom's right, I've been too cooped up. I leaned against the kitchen island, cradling a mug of black coffee. Your ride is outside. Daniel. Right. He grabbed his handle, then paused, giving me a patronizing smile. You'll be here when I get back. Right. No more legal drama. We're good, I'll be here. I said. It was a lie of omission. I would be in this house for a few more hours. I would be in this life for a few more days. Good girl. He pulled the door shut, and the house finally exhaled. I didn't waste a second. By noon, I had signed the digital offer letter for the San Diego position, $165,000 base, a generous signing bonus, and most importantly, 3,000 miles of distance. Natalie called an hour later. The LLC has cleared the final walkthrough. Since it's a cash transaction and we've already bypassed the appraisal contingency, we're ready to fund $575,000 gross. You'll see roughly $525,000 hit your account by Friday morning. As is I asked. As is... They don't care about the furniture or the boxes. They're turning it into a rental immediately. That night, I packed my life into 6 boxes and a suitcase. I left the designer coats Daniel had draped over my chairs. I left the gym equipment clogging the guest room. I left the fragile shoe collection. I was taking my future. He could keep his clutter. On Thursday, the penultimate blow landed. Ruth called, her voice sharp with habitual authority. Daniel says you've been quiet. I expect you to have a celebratory dinner ready when he lands on Sunday. I won't be here. Mother. Excuse me, I resigned this morning. Effective immediately. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear her brain trying to find a narrative where she still had leverage. You can't. We have the Q4 launch. You have the access codes the 2FA is tied to your hardware. At will works both ways. I said, my voice as steady as a heartbeat. I've left my laptop on my desk. The systems are active. But since I'm no longer an employee, I've delinked my personal device from the security protocols. You'll have to find someone else to verify the logins. I hung up before she could scream. Friday afternoon, the wire transfer hit. $525,000, the price of my silence, my house, and my rebirth. On Saturday morning, I placed my spare key on the empty kitchen counter. I walked out, locked the door for the final time, and didn't look back. At the airport, I checked my phone one last time. A text from Daniel, a photo of a cocktail on a beach. Living again. It read. I powered off the phone, dropped the SIM card into a trash bin, and walked toward the gate. When the plane lifted off the tarmac, I didn't feel like I was escaping. I felt like I was finally being delivered. San Diego didn't feel like freedom right away. It felt unfamiliar. Quiet in a way I wasn't used to yet. The apartment was small, bare floors, a single chair by the window until my things arrived. I slept on a mattress on the ground the first night and woke up before the alarm, heart racing for no reason. Then I remembered where I was. No one was going to knock. No one was going to demand explanations. No one was tracking my calendar. My phone stayed face down most of the day. Missed calls stacked up. Voicemails I didn't open. Ruth's number stopped appearing after a while. Daniel tried once, then twice, then switched to messages that jumped between anger and disbelief. I didn't answer. On Sunday evening, I opened a bottle of Cabernet I'd brought with me, the same label Daniel had treated like table wine. I poured one glass and sat on the floor by the balcony door. The city hummed outside. Distant traffic. A neighbor laughing somewhere below. Normal sounds. Other people living their lives without intersecting with mine. I took a sip and let it sit. What surprised me wasn't the relief. It was the absence of guilt. The way my chest didn't tighten when I thought about my mother's voice or my brother's expectations. I had always believed leaving would hurt more than staying. Naomi Keller, it turned out, didn't disappear when she stopped holding everything together. She showed up. The next morning, I unpacked slowly, hung clothes, set my laptop on the desk, made coffee and drank it while standing, watching light move across the wall. Later that week, I deleted the old work accounts from my phone. Not in anger, just clean up. If you've been following this story and want to stay with us, you can subscribe quietly. The same way Naomi stepped into her next chapter. At Revenge Sins, we notice when someone stops fighting and starts choosing themselves.